The first thing that I talk about is if I change the name from bankruptcy to financial planning, more people would look at it and look at it in a different light. But really, ultimately, that's what it is. It's financial planning, maybe not in the typically thought of situation where you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest and you're looking for the best place to invest it. But it is a model of financial planning, because that $100,000 that you may have in debt, it's just as important to deal with that, so that it doesn't hinder you in the future, so that you can move forward and achieve and get the goals that you want to achieve. I oftentimes tell people when they ask if I should file bankruptcy or not, if I gave you 2 blank pieces of paper and said it's going to cost you, $500 to do it this way, or it's going to cost you $500,000 to do it that way, which way would you do it? And that's really the way that I base and look at all of the bankruptcy consults that I do. And I think the best way to answer that question of should I file bankruptcy, there's a lot of factors that go into that decision. Each person, each case is individual, so this isn't meant to be a one-size-fits-all. But the first thing that we look at is the amount of debt. The amount of debt in relation to the amount of assets, the amount of debt in relation to the type of debt. Typically, student loan debt cannot be discharged in a bankruptcy. There are exceptions to that. There are hardship discharges. Depending on the type of student loan debt, it may be dischargeable. But if you have $100,000 worth of student loan debt and $2,000 worth of credit card debt, more times than not, bankruptcy is not going to be the right avenue for you. There's other options out there. But that's one of the important things to consider and look at when you're answering that initial question of should I file bankruptcy or not. The other thing to look at is, what type of debts, what medical, credit card, are they debts? How old are they? Are these debts that are 5, 6, 7 years old and nobody's ever done any collection on them? Are these debts that are only 2 or 3 years old and collection activities are just starting? One of the other questions, and it's been a relative question, a relatively important question here in Southwest Florida over the past 5, 6 years, is what about the house that either foreclosed or short sold or something of that nature? The house was worth less than what I owe on it, and do I have to worry about them coming after me in the future, or should I just sit back and wait, and if they do come after me in the future, then I will address it then? That's one of the most difficult questions or situations, and how it all relates. Well, it also relates to what your situation is now. The bankruptcy code starts with looking at your income to determine which type of bankruptcy you're eligible for, whether it be Chapter 7, Chapter 13. Most times if you've had the hardship or the unfortunate circumstance that have led to the loss of your house or the big debt, it's also been with a corresponding reduction in income or a loss in income. So it may be better to address it now, even though they're not actively collecting, than it would be in the future. Similarly, the assets and income for a household if one spouse has lost their job and the other spouse hasn't. And I want to address each of those situations a little bit more in depth a little bit later on when we start talking about what chapter of bankruptcy is more important. Is it a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13? Or maybe in some cases even a Chapter 11. But, that fundamental question of should I or shouldn't I? What are the alternatives? That's a lot of times people will come and they'll say, well, if I don't file bankruptcy, are there any alternatives that are out there that'll allow me to deal with this? And there certainly are some alternatives. One is to talk to the creditor and see if there's anything that they're willing to do to help you. In fact, you can read some review sites out there, and they'll review credit card companies based on their willingness to help people out during the hard times. And maybe that's an important consideration to look at when you're applying for a credit card. Nobody wants to be in a bad situation, or nobody ever expects not to be able to pay their bills. But maybe that's something to look at, kind of preventative. But once you're in the situation, it's always good. You can talk directly to the creditor, see if they have any debt forgiveness plans, if they've got any hardship plans, if they're willing to waive the interest rates, and allow you to make the plans.